The MacBook Air M2 has now been out for about a week or so, and in the meantime we've had a ton of videos and reviews and articles about it, and now we know the good, the bad, and the ugly about it. So today I'm going to build two ideal configurations in my mind: a base configuration, a base setup, which is different than the actual base model that Apple sells, and also a more ideal configuration. So what's good about it is that it's a significant step up over the M1 predecessor. It has a better screen, it has the return of MagSafe, a new design. I think it's even a little bit lighter overall, so it's clearly an improvement, not to talk about the performance of the M2, which is definitely improved over the M1. The bad part is that, well, inflation strikes, and it's now $200 more expensive than before in its base setup. However, there's an ugly truth behind that. The base setup is actually saddled with a much slower SSD compared to its predecessor. So the M1 has an SSD that I believe is almost twice as fast. There's tons of videos on this. I'm going to link some in the description down below from other creators. Some of them did really in-depth testing. Long story short, the SSD and RAM in macOS with Apple Silicon are treated as part of unified memory, as Apple calls it. And it means that the Mac will usually offload a lot of data from the RAM to the SSD as often as it needs to keep everything running smoothly. This is where that slower SSD plays into it, and you might actually see some performance issues down the line in even day-to-day usage. We're not even talking about extreme use case scenarios. Of course, there are other views who are saying that YouTubers are blowing this out of proportion, and whatever, to each their own. But personally, I would avoid a model that has an asterisk in its description. Like, this is a great machine, but... So, because the base model is truly the only one in the lineup with this issue, I am totally going to avoid it. And having said that, let's go up with the two configurations I've been talking about. First up, we have a base model, and this one's pretty simple. You just add the 512GB storage option, and that's it. Oh, there's another one, the fast charger. I think that's a quality of life improvement that everybody would benefit from, because fast charging will allow you to charge the MacBook Air from 0 to 50% in half an hour. That gives you about 4 or 5 hours of usage at the very minimum, so it's absolutely fantastic, and you're gonna feel the impact in day-to-day usage. Other than that, I've kept everything base, so we go with the 8-core GPU option. Not ideal, but still a step up compared to the M1. And also just 8GB of RAM. And at the end of the day, this configuration is $1,420. Pretty expensive if you ask me, but hey, inflation strikes, like I said. Okay, now moving on to the more ideal build, and this is going to be a little bit of a step up from that base model. So we're going to go with the 10-core GPU option for the added benefit of having the full fat M2 on board. We're going to go with 16GB of RAM. There's also a 24GB option available, but that's actually another $200 on top. I think it's a little bit overkill for most scenarios, and I would say that 16GB would be enough. Of course, for those with deep enough pockets, or for those who really know that they will need the extra performance in the future, it's good that Apple added this option. And in terms of storage, we're going to go with the 1TB SSD. The cool news here is that we get the fast charger included for free with that 10-core GPU option. So at the end of the day, we're looking at the $1,900 price. So these are the two setups that I would personally spend my own hard-earned money on. But I don't think this is as cut as dry as it might look. We need to frame them a little bit, right? So on the bottom side of the spectrum, on the real entry-level MacBook Air that I would consider, which is $1,420, like I said, that's kind of an expensive machine. And if you are more budget conscious, or just have $1,000 to spend on a laptop and that's it, maybe you can add $100 on top of that, but $1,400 is a stretch. Well, Apple kept the M1 Air on sale for this specific reason. There are a lot of people who just don't want to spend that kind of cash on a laptop. And the M1 MacBook Air is still a phenomenal machine. It does like 90% of what the new M2 version will do. Yes, it has a slightly dated design and thicker bezels on the display, but it still gets a great keyboard, a very good display, it still has stellar battery life, and it's going to perform really, really well in day-to-day usage. And even if that $1,000 base price is a bit of a stretch, relax, because the M1 MacBook Air has been enormously popular, and as such, it's available refurbished with a ton of retailers, including Apple themselves, who have it on their website for $850. So the reality is the M1 MacBook Air is still a fantastic computer, even though it's 1.5 years old. By this point, I think it's still amazing in day-to-day usage, and guess what? 90% of people would be totally fine with it. Moving on to the other end of the spectrum, at the ideal build that I've made for $1,900, that thing is within $100 of the much more capable 14-inch MacBook Pro. In fact, I think the Air has only a couple of advantages over that Pro. It has better battery life, and it is more portable because it's lighter, it's smaller, slimmer, and so on. Apart from that, the MacBook Pro is better at everything. It has more ports, it has a much better display, it has a beefier chip. So overall, the choice is really difficult there. Do you want a really portable machine with very good battery life, or do you want more of a performance powerhouse? It's very important to know your specific use case scenario and pick the right machine that's right for you. At the end of the day, I think the M2 MacBook Air is actually pretty cool, but it is also pretty pricey. And I'm really upset with that. I'm really sad that Apple had to saddle it with more expensive price point, and I'm really disappointed that they've also saddled the base model with a very slow SSD compared to before. And the big problem there is that they don't disclose this. They don't say anywhere on their website, look dude, the base model is worse than the others, okay? This is normal. I've seen it in the industry many times. It happens with phones, with laptops, with everything. But it's important to have disclosure for the end user so that they know what they're buying. Let me know down in the comment section, what do you think? Which one would you go for? The M1 Air, the M2 Air? What versions of the M2 Air? Which one did you already buy? And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and sub to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.